Alright, grab your coffee and pull up a chair. Because today we're talking about something that seems very simple, but it actually makes a huge difference in cooking. Preheating your pan the right way before frying. Now I know this sounds like one of those tiny kitchen steps that people skip all the time. And honestly, most of us do. You're hungry. You grab the pan, throw it on the stove, add oil, toss the food in, and hope for the best. And sometimes it works, but other times, the food sticks. The surface burns in spots, and you end up scraping half of your dinner off the pan. If you've ever tried to flip an egg and it felt like the egg had glued itself permanently to the pan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And the funny part is, a lot of those problems come down to one simple thing. The pan wasn't hot enough yet, or sometimes it was way too hot. Today I want to talk about the little science behind this, but in a very practical, everyday kitchen way, the way you'd explain it to a friend over coffee. When a pan heats up, the metal actually expands a tiny bit. It's not something you can see with your eyes, but it's happening. The surface becomes smoother and more even at a microscopic level. Think of it like the pan relaxing and getting ready for work. And when the surface of the pan reaches the right temperature, the cooking oil spreads evenly across the surface instead of pooling in little spots. You've probably seen this happen. The oil suddenly starts moving smoothly across the pan and looks almost silky. That's the moment you know the pan is getting ready. That thin layer of oil becomes a barrier between the food and the metal. It's like a little protective cushion that helps the food release instead of sticking. If you add food to a cold pan, that layer hasn't formed yet. The proteins in the food start bonding directly to the metal surface before the oil has a chance to coat everything properly. The pan and the food basically grab onto each other, and not in a good way. That's when sticking happens. That's why eggs tear apart, fish breaks into pieces, and pancakes sometimes refuse to flip properly. And then you're standing there with the spatula trying to rescue dinner like it's a kitchen emergency. But when the pan is properly preheated, the surface is ready for the food. The oil is evenly spread, the metal has expanded slightly, and the food cooks the way it's supposed to. The result is better browning, easier flipping, and much less scraping later. And honestly, once you understand this little bit of kitchen science, you start noticing it every time you cook. I remember years ago when I first started cooking more seriously. I would try to fry eggs and they would stick every single time. I thought the problem was the pan. Then I thought the problem was the oil. At one point, I was almost ready to blame the eggs themselves. Eventually, I realized the problem was actually me. I wasn't giving the pan enough time to heat up. I was basically throwing the egg into a sleepy, half-awake pan and expecting it to perform like a professional chef. Once I started letting the pan sit on the burner for a minute or two before adding oil, everything changed. Eggs released easier, vegetables browned better, chicken developed that beautiful golden crust instead of that pale, I'm trying my best look. It felt like unlocking a small kitchen secret that nobody had bothered to explain to me before. Here's the simple method I use now almost every time I cook. And once you get used to it, it becomes second nature. First, I place the pan on the burner and turn the heat to medium. Not high heat right away. Medium is usually the sweet spot for letting the pan warm up gradually and evenly. Then, I let the pan sit there for about a minute or two. Now I know a minute or two can feel like a long time when you're hungry, but trust me, this is not wasted time. The pan is slowly waking up and getting ready to cook. While the pan warms up, I'm usually doing something else. Chopping garlic, slicing vegetables, seasoning chicken, or just getting the rest of the ingredients ready. Cooking works best when things happen in little stages like that. If you just stand there staring at the pan, waiting for it to heat up, it feels like forever. But if you're prepping something else, the pan is ready before you even realize it. Once the pan feels warm, that's when I add the oil. And here's an important detail that many people don't realize. I almost never add oil to a cold pan unless I'm doing something very specific, like gently warming garlic in olive oil or making a sauce that needs a slow start. Most of the time, the pan should be warm first, then the oil goes in. When the oil hits a warm pan, it spreads out beautifully across the surface instead of sitting there in a thick puddle. It starts to move smoothly and coat the entire bottom of the pan. You'll often see the oil begin to shimmer slightly, almost like it's turning silky. That's the moment when the pan is ready for food. And once you start paying attention to that moment, cooking becomes so much easier. Food releases better, browns better, and you're not standing there wrestling with a spatula trying to free your dinner from the pan. There's also a little trick cooks sometimes use to check pan temperature. And I love this one because it feels a little like a tiny kitchen science experiment. All you do is sprinkle a very small drop of water into the pan. If the water just sits there and slowly evaporates, like it's taking a nap, the pan isn't ready yet. It's still warming up. But when the pan is properly heated, something really fun happens. The droplet suddenly pulls together into a little ball and starts sliding around the pan like a tiny marble on ice. It almost looks like it's dancing or skating across the surface. The first time you see it happen, it's actually kind of fascinating. You stand there watching this little droplet racing around thinking, okay, that's pretty cool. And that's your signal that the pan is hot enough to start cooking. Just remember, you only need the tiniest drop of water. We're not making soup in the frying pan. Once the droplet dances around, wipe the pan dry, add your oil, and you're ready to cook. It's a simple little trick, but once you try it a few times, it becomes one of those habits that makes you feel like you secretly know what you're doing in the kitchen. Another thing people don't always realize is that different pans behave completely differently when it comes to heat. And once you understand that, cooking becomes so much easier. Think of pans almost like different personalities in the kitchen. Stainless steel pans are a little bit like that friend who takes a while to wake up in the morning. They don't heat instantly. They need a minute. But once they're warm, they hold heat beautifully and cook very evenly. That's why restaurants love them. If you give them a little patience at the beginning, they reward you with great browning. Cast iron pans are even more dramatic in this department. Cast iron heats slowly, but once it's hot, it stays hot for a long time. That's why cast iron is famous for getting that beautiful golden crust on steak, potatoes, or even cornbread. The downside? If you rush it and throw food into a half-heated cast iron pan, it will absolutely let you know you made a mistake. Cast iron has a personality. It demands respect. Then there are non-stick pans, which are the opposite. They heat up very quickly and don't need a lot of heat to do their job. In fact, if you crank the heat too high, non-stick pans will protest by overheating the oil or cooking food too fast. With non-stick, gentle heat usually works best. And recently a lot of people are cooking with ceramic-coated cookware, which sits somewhere in the middle of all these personalities. Ceramic pans heat fairly quickly like non-stick, but they usually tolerate slightly higher heat. They also tend to give you a little more browning than classic non-stick. The key with ceramic pans is still moderation. Medium heat, a little oil, and patience. If you blast them with high heat right away, the coating can lose its non-stick qualities faster. Think of ceramic cookware as the calm, reasonable friend in the group. It works beautifully when you treat it gently. So part of becoming comfortable in the kitchen is simply learning how your pan behaves. After you cook with the same pan a few times, you start to recognize its rhythm. You begin to notice little things, how long it takes to warm up, how the oil moves when it's ready, how food reacts when it touches the surface. And after a while, you don't even think about it anymore. Your hands just know when the pan is ready. It's one of those quiet kitchen skills that develops over time, the kind that makes cooking feel less stressful and a lot more enjoyable. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make when frying is crowding the pan. It's completely understandable. You're hungry, the ingredients are ready, and you just want to get dinner on the table. So everything goes into the pan at once. The chicken, the vegetables, maybe a few extra pieces since there's still space. I've done it too. But here's the problem. Even if the pan started perfectly hot, adding too much food all at once drops the temperature almost immediately. The pan suddenly has to heat up a whole crowd of cold ingredients, and it simply can't keep up. When that happens, the food stops frying and starts steaming instead. Instead of that beautiful sizzling sound, you get a quiet, slightly sad little hiss. And instead of developing a golden crust, the food turns pale, soft, and sometimes a little watery. You know the kind. The chicken that looks like it's been politely warmed rather than properly cooked. This is especially noticeable with vegetables. If you pile mushrooms, zucchini, or onions into a crowded pan, they release moisture, and suddenly the whole pan turns into something closer to a vegetable sauna. The simple fix is giving your food a little breathing room. When ingredients have space around them, the heat can circulate properly. Moisture evaporates, the surface browns, and that delicious golden crust begins to form. Sometimes the best cooking trick is simply using a second pan or cooking in batches. Yes, it takes a few extra minutes, but the difference in flavor and texture is huge. Think of it this way. Frying works best when every piece of food has its own little personal space. Even your dinner appreciates good boundaries. When the pan is properly heated, food develops what cooks call the Maillard reaction. That's the chemical reaction that creates those delicious brown surfaces on meat, vegetables, and even pancakes. It's the reason seared food tastes richer and more complex. Without enough heat, that reaction doesn't happen, and the food just tastes flatter. So, the next time you cook something in a pan, try this small change. Give the pan a minute or two to heat up before adding oil and food. It seems like such a tiny step, but it can completely change the way your food cooks. Better browning, less sticking, more flavor. And once you get used to doing it, it becomes second nature. Just another little kitchen habit that makes cooking easier and more enjoyable. Alright friend, that's today's kitchen tip. Next time you reach for the frying pan, remember, the pan needs a moment to wake up before the cooking begins.